and welcome back to the lair. I have finally seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. The new movie from Michelle Yeoh, Huey Kwan, Jamie Lee Curtis, Stephanie Hisui, James Hwang. So this was the small movie that could this last spring, where everybody in the world was talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once, especially when Doctor Strange came out and there were all the, they're both about multiverses. Oh! This is a really good movie. This is a really solid sci-fi film, and it's a lot of fun. This follows Michelle Yeoh as Evelyn, the owner and proprietor of a laundromat, with her husband Waymond, who is played by our favorite short round of all time, Huey Kwan. I always refer to him as Shorty whenever I'm watching the movie. I've watched it twice now. I can't help it. It's just, it's so good seeing him again. We'll talk about that in a second. But he plays the kind of milquetoast husband, Waymond, who wants to help but also feels extremely ignored. They have a daughter named Joy, played by Stephanie Hisui, and she has a girlfriend. She's trying to introduce the grandpa, played by James Hwang, to her girlfriend. There's all this drama going around, and meanwhile, while all this is happening, the laundromat is being audited by the IRS. So they got to go to the IRS and talk to Jamie Lee Curtis about their taxes, because they claim a lot of things on their taxes that they should not be claiming, and it's kind of an issue. And when that's where the inciting incident happens, is when they get into the IRS building. A little before that, you see Waymond kind of freak out and jump across a bunch of washing machines. Once they get to the IRS, that's when the real story starts, because now we meet Alpha Waymond. And Alpha Waymond is this other universe Waymond, who is hacking into this universe's Waymond's brain, kind of using him as this puppet to explain things to Evelyn, who turns out might be the most important person in the multiverse. There's this great evil in the world, Jobu Tupaki, and it is unclear at first, but becomes very evident in a very quick manner that this is a person that's very close to Evelyn, and that Evelyn may be the only person who can stop Jobu Tupaki from destroying the entire multiverse. I don't want to give any spoilers. We do meet Jobu Tupaki. She's one of my favorite characters in the movie. She's really interesting. There's a lot of questions that kind of come up around her. She can affect reality. She can basically turn anything into anything else, because somewhere in the multiverse that thing exists as something else. So she can take those 2 points, squish them together, and turn a stick into a sword. And I like Jobu. She's great. She's really great. I just had a lot of questions about how she affects people when she possesses them. This was a big thing that came up a lot for me, was that there's this element of the movie called verse jumping. So verse jumping allows you to connect with an alternate version of yourself's brain. By being connected to yourself in this other world, you get all the skills of that person. So say this other person is a great martial artist. Verse jumping to that person, you gain those skills, and now you can fight whatever thing is happening to you in real time while also connected to this other universe. The plot becomes, how many universes can we string to? And it does get a little confusing at times. There are a few moments where I kind of looked at it and I was like, I don't really fully understand what's happening here. I think that's kind of the point, though, with this movie, is that they're not gonna explain everything, and they're not going to show you everything. They're just going to bring up a lot of ideas, and then you as an audience member kind of fill in everything else. I definitely felt like there were a lot of questions left hanging, and I'm not gonna discount the movie for it. By about the 2/3 point, the narrative structure gets such that you can't even keep track of which world is which anymore, which is good and bad. It's not confusing. It's not confusing bad, but it is kind of like there are elements of it that you're like, what, wait, that universe, that one thing happened, and I'm not sure that we ever got resolution. Did we get resolution on that? Did we find out why that happened, or what that was for? What possible reason? So there were some continuity issues, but overall, really, really enjoyable movie. Really, really fun. Brings up a lot of really good ideas, a lot of really interesting concepts. I think that this is along the lines of Inception, where they don't really necessarily go out of their way to explain the idea fully. It's more just the concept that they're using, and that's fine. I just ended up with a lot of questions at the end. Great humor in the movie, I will say as well. It's very funny. It's very funny. Jobu Tupaki's whole thing is that she has created an everything bagel, and she is going to put everything in the universe on this bagel, and it's falling into itself now at like a black hole. I really like the story and concepts here. I think that this became more like, let's see how many lines we can cross and we'll string this whole thing together and it'll pop up like a cat's cradle. I'm engaged. I'm really, really, really engaged. There's a part of me that when I'm watching it, I just want a little bit more. And that was something similar with Inception. I'm just like, I want just a little bit more. You're setting up a lot of things. It doesn't break its own rules the way Inception does. Inception has a really bad history of just like, it sets up a rule and then it immediately disregards it. Everything Everywhere All at Once doesn't do that. It is an incredibly engaging and entertaining movie. It does multiverse in a way that I really enjoy. Multiverse is one of those things that I've always found fascinating. I actually took a science class at community college where for some reason I got to talk about multiversal theory as my final project. I don't know how that has anything to do with earth science, but it did. Everything Everywhere All at Once is extremely entertaining, extremely good, well acted. I love seeing Shorty again. Ki-Huy Kwan is extremely good in this. I'm so glad that he came back to acting. I pray to God he's not gonna be, but I want him to be in the new Indiana Jones so badly after this. I want them to rewrite the entire 5th Indiana Jones movie just so we can have Shorty in it. Because I think after seeing this, he could save the Indiana Jones saga. He has some great fight scenes in this. He is by far my favorite character. Evelyn is a whole thing, and she's a great protagonist. But there's something about Waymond and his kind of, first off, the way that he oscillates between Alpha Waymond and regular Waymond, and the dichotomy between those two characters, but also the innocence of Waymond and the way that he goes about everything that he does. It's so charming and endearing as a character trait, and then when he does switch into Alpha Waymond, he's a badass. So it's like you have both sides of it, and it's balanced out extremely well. The performance is great. Jamie Lee Curtis also gives an excellent performance here as Deirdre, the accountant who is one of Jobu Tupaki's lead acolytes. She gets to staple something to her forehead. There's this great element of it where they have to do weird things in order to verse jump. So, like, again, the writing and the compositing and the building of the world I really like. I just ended up wanting more out of all of it because I ended up with these questions at the end. Not anything major, just like, what happens to the person being verse jumped if something bad happens to them? Which they talk about a little bit. At one point, Deirdre gets thrown down 2 sets of staircases, and we see her in the next scene, and she's being wheelchaired out of the building, and she still has a thing stapled to her head and all this other stuff. And, it's just like, I just had questions. Like, her head went through a wall, possibly 2. I have questions about, does she have a concussion? Does she know anything about that? She doesn't seem to know anything about that. And then there's a whole thing with Jobu Tupaki in that same vein because of her characterization and what she means to the plot, without spoiling anything. So there were just a lot of elements there where I was just like, I like this. I don't know that these are plot holes. Maybe they're hanging chads. I'm not sure. But at the end of the day, I just end up looking at it being like, this is really good. I wish it went just a little further. It tries really, really hard, and it's really, really good. It's an incredibly endearing and heartfelt film. And I definitely liked it quite a bit. But there was some element of it where I just wanted it fully rounded out, instead of there being kind of these hanging elements that you kind of sort through yourself as an audience member. I just wanted it kind of rounded out just a little bit to help flush out everything. Now, is that a negative? No, by no means. I would still give this like a solid 8.5, 9. Like, this is still way up on my list. This is still gonna be one of those movies that everybody's talking about for the rest of the year. When award season comes around, it better be nominated, all these things. I just wish that maybe some elements of it were just a little tidier, a little cleaner, because some things happen and then you don't really understand why they happen, and then they're not addressed. But I really like the ending, I really like the finale, I really like the message of the film, I really like the last third of it. Honestly, I really like the whole thing. There's not really a point where I'm like, ugh, I'm bored with this. Like, even watching it the second time, I was like, okay, this is really engaging all the way through. Even knowing all the twists and turns of the story, you're not bored or like, I'm just gonna tune out for this part because I know it's not important. There's not really a moment like that in the movie. The whole thing really works and holds its own extremely well. So I would highly recommend Everything Everywhere All at Once. My name is Alfred Jutsum. This has been NerdPod Generations on YouTube. Check out all of our other stuff on YouTube. We got plenty of other things going on. Lots of movie reviews, some other project type things. Anyway, it's been wonderful talking to you folks. Check out Everything Everywhere All at Once. And until next time, I have been Alfred Jutsum. Have a great time, friends and enemies.